Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have with me a relatively new friend. We've known each other for a couple of years now. We met at a conference. We fell madly in love right away, including her daughter was there. I fell madly in love with her daughter. And this is a very special episode for those of us who are working through mental health issues, identity issues, and just learning how to love ourselves a little bit more thoroughly. I want to welcome you, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, to the podcast.
Oh, sister, it is, and sisters and brothers, it is a privilege to be together. And yes, Elena, I have to say that, my daughter, for a moment, might want to have had another mom, and that would be you, but you're the cool auntie, so it works.
Perfect. I'm so happy to be the cool aunt. I want to just share with our listener a little bit of your story. And this is written, dear listener, in Sophie's voice, my story. Through the years, I've had the chance to meet inspiring world leaders as Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, Pope Francis, King Abdullah II of Jordan, Michelle and Barack Obama, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, First Lady Jill Biden and President Joe Biden, whom all inspired me on ways to bring about change and more justice in the world. Before I started evolving on my professional path, I studied commerce at McGill University, which was, by the way, my second choice, and I would have applied there had I not gotten into my school. I hold a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Montreal, as well as a certificate from the ProMedia School of Television and Radio. I'm deeply passionate about exploring the great outdoors. I love sports, movement, and yoga. I absolutely wanted to share the knowledge and happiness it brought me, so I got certified to become a yoga teacher for children and adults, and I practice and guide meditation and yoga nidra sessions to reset the nervous system and find calm. In the past years, I wrote and recorded my first book, Closer Together, with the aim of encouraging us to better understand the mechanisms of our own personality and the quality of all our relationships, including the one with ourself. This marks the beginning of a new chapter. Trust me when I tell you it won't be boring, and there's more to come. Welcome, Sophie. I'm so happy that you're here.
In very wise defiance, am I joining you?
Yes, I love it. I love it. You actually have a quote at the beginning of your book from our dear shared friend, Diego, also known as Young Pueblo, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. All human beings are united by birth, life, death, and every emotion in between. And I think that's a wonderful way to start not only your book, but to start this conversation, because honestly, we're all of one energy. And to try and bring us to some cohesive coherence at this time is probably one of the most important undertakings that we can attempt. Your book starts with holding ourselves and remembering what that means. And I wonder if you might begin by talking about what that phrase means to you today.
And we go deep from the get-go, which I love. But I'm going to be a little bit defiant, and I'm going to talk to you and to all of you about the banana. Now, you must be going, oh, wow, okay. So imagine a banana and ask yourself, how much genetic makeup do you think we as humans share with a banana? Go ahead, take a wild guess, just for fun.
Well, I do know that I just read a statistic that our bodies are something like 80-something% more capable of taking in the nutrients from a shake filled with berries when there's a banana present. I just read that literally yesterday.
Oh, yeah. There's great potassium content in there. Well, listen, we share 44.1% genetic makeup with a banana. Let's have fun
Wow.
and let's try a fruit fly.
A fruit fly. I wish I had wings like a fruit fly and I could move about as quickly.
Yeah, me too. About 20%.
Wow.
The oldest bacteria in the world called archaea, which astrobiologists think comes from another planet, about 20%. Take a guess for a cow.
A cow.
Yeah.
Well, mammal. Milk.
80%.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in the 60 to 80 range.
Right?
Wow,
Okay,
that's amazing.
A dog? A dog?
I'm going to go with 40.
96.5. Chimpanzee, 98.5. And human. Hello, sisters. Hello, brothers.
100%.
We are the same. But do we ever live not knowing how to hold each other because we haven't been taught to hold ourselves? This is why I guess I have my own life path and I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do, with all of my energy, heart, and soul. And I doubt and I fall flat on my face and I get back up and I get back up again. And holding myself, I think to me, if I'm using my left brain to answer you, which is my cognitive logical brain, is to stop resisting and start flowing with the force of life, with the present moment. Stop projecting. And from an emotional right brain, hemisphere answer, I think is letting go, which I find very hard. I'm hypervigilant. I come from a family where there is addiction on both sides, lots of love, but lots of addiction. And from generations who did not know how to look at their own trauma, how to sit with their pain without feeling overwhelmed. So I've seen the ravages that addiction can do, and the screaming fire that that ramps up into families. And so I became a hypervigilant only child. So I had to be, in tune with the nervous system of the parents and adults that I was surrounded with, and very, very, very attuned to what was happening around me. So today, as an adult, obviously that makes me very empathetic and in tune with people's emotions, but also taking a lot in and a people pleaser, so that I feel that when I ask, are you there? Are you going to leave me? Am I okay? Am I going to be abandoned? That somehow I've learned how to navigate life by being extremely present, also extremely generous with my presence. And through my lifetime as an adult, trying to really understand my triggers better and why I move and act the way I do, so I can come back to the present moment and stop resisting and stop trying to please, so I can free myself of what it means to live a life of real freedom, not from the world, but in the world.
In your book, you quote Yale psychology professor Laurie Santos. She studied the science of happiness. And she talks about the fact that natural selection, by its very nature, and this is the sort of scientific, I guess you would call it a process, but it's really just a concept, a fact of our existence. Natural selection doesn't actually care if we're happy. Natural selection is about survival, reproduction, finding resources. It's not about joy. And your point in bringing this out in the sort of early stages of your book is that on a purely neurological level, we're not made to be happy. We're made to make it to the next generation. And it actually, this is the important part, it takes courage and work, you say, to be happy. We must
Isn't that fascinating?
Fascinating. You go on to say that we must learn to live with integrity and coherence, staying true to our values and expressing our authentic self. In this way, we can take control over ourselves and our lives. And I want to ask you about that. As Dr. Santos says, getting out of our own way is the first step to happiness. And I'm curious to know, I've had issues my whole life, and I think you and I are similar in this way, where we just want to kind of oversee everything. We want to know where everything is. There's a certain level of definitely vigilance, as you mentioned. I want to know how much, as I get older, I'm seeing this, how much emphasis do you think we should put on control over the letting go? I know you wrote this several years ago, but I'm interested in hearing how this is evolving for you.
Well, I wrote the book during the pandemic, and I've been meeting people from, across the world, being able to talk about this. And what I've noticed is that, first of all, it's a universal topic. Second of all, it's a universal longing to be seen, validated, loved, and to feel free in our own lives and in control, meaning holding the reins and having a sense of agency, but not control over others, because control over others from somebody who's a type A personality like me is not freedom. So, a couple of things here to touch on when you talked about Laurie Santos, who does run the Happiness Lab. It is true that our human brain, which we share, it's about 200,000 years old and we all have one, always is seeking to get away from danger and seek comfort. So when you get back from work and you're tired, your penchant, your leaning, your natural leaning in your body is to actually grab that pack of beer or wine and watch TV, because it means that you're not going to be in pain, you're going to pull away from danger and seek comfort. So when we apply that to happiness, the really interesting thing is that when we talk about happiness, we're talking about dopamine release. You want more when you're happy. You want more of what you're getting, which is a dopamine release, neurochemical from the brain. And that can be very addictive because it's the same reward center, incentive and reward center, as when we have like highs with drugs or sex or whatever it is. And contempt is more related to relaxing hormones, serotonin, oxytocin. And because we live in a dopamine addicted nation and culture, the relaxing hormones become boring to the human brain. Think of teenagers who are, keep trying to get higher and higher in different ways, relationship, substances, and being more isolated from one another. We're really in a pickle where now we're not differentiating between happiness and content. And content doesn't really want more. It just is in the present moment. So, to answer your question directly, the capacity that we have to understand how our human body functions and how our nervous system is always at the root of our actions and reactions, and then looking at what type of personality do I have and how much am I my personality? Because here's the trick: we think we are our personality. We're not. We're not. Personality is an accumulation and an amalgamation of adaptive behaviors and defense mechanisms that we've adopted in order to love and be loved. I think it's Dr. Gabor Mate, who I collaborated with to write this book, who says, we are not our personality. Every behavior is an attempt to love and or be loved. So this does not excuse bad behavior or wars or criminal actions. Of course it doesn't. But when we go back to the roots, human beings want connection, and we become less happy when we are less connected to ourselves and to others. So the great news in this is that we're able to be taught and to teach and to learn that we can hold the reins of our own chariot and our own horses. And I'm just using that metaphor because I think of Arjuna and the Bhagavad Gita in the great, Hindu story of what it means to navigate right and wrong and all of the human depth. And I also love riding horses and being free in a field. So the more I think we experience and allow ourselves to feel safe in human experience, which means to be knowledgeable in how we navigate our own nervous systems, we give ourselves the chance to lead a free life. So whether you're a monk in meditation, whether you're a nurse with patients, whether you're a teacher or whatever, name it, a person on Wall Street, you have the tools inside of you in connection to yourself to regulate who you are and how you eat, how you sleep, how you vote, how you make love, how you show up. And it's just fascinating because we live in a culture that doesn't give us the reins. It rewards us for self-betrayal. It rewards us for self-betrayal.
Wow. Just taking that in.
Me too, as I say it.
I feel that so strongly. It's funny because I have a question that was going to be a little bit later in the conversation, but I'm going to ask it now because it's a nice segue here from what you're saying. You spent some time with Terry Real, also a shared friend. I live for Belinda, his wife. Oh my God. When I met her, I was like, oh my God, my mom is reincarnated. Here she is, Belinda. You worked with him on part of this book, and he said, quote, family pathology rolls from generation to generation, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation has the courage to turn, to face it. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares the children that follow. And that's the work. And beyond that, your family pathology is situated inside a cultural background, the culture of patriarchy, the culture of racism, the culture of misogyny, the culture of toxic individualism. End quote. So I'd like to know from you, and this is kind of following what you were just saying, how are you changing this thread? How are you evolving what's been in the past, what was handed to you? I mean, I can see so many ways, but I'd love to hear how you feel you're doing that in this season of your life.
I'm weeping right now because as a mother of 3, I don't know if I've saved my children from trauma. I don't think that's possible, but I have taken in the pain. And I am a woman from my generation who decided to carry and to take in the pain of past generations so I can understand better why I got to where I am and how I can change it for my own children and their children to come. And it's a work in progress. And, my father had a boating accident, and I talk about this in the book. And I've never said this before because I just learned about it. And not too long ago, I got an email that came to me from a total stranger. Her name was Jennifer, and she said, I read your book, and I don't know if this has anything to do with your father. But my father is now dying, and he is on his deathbed, and I'm trying to relieve him from a regret that he has. And she asked me if the boating accident that my father had happened on Blue Sea Lake in 1962. And that is the moment. And she said, my father's only regret, now that he knows that he's dying, is that he never told Jean Grégoire, my father, that he forgave him for what happened during the accident because he lost a brother in that boating accident.
Oh my God.
And I learned this, Elena, and anybody who's listening, I learned this. My father died 8 months ago. And his own trauma and his own suffering that was untreated, if he could have received that pardon, that tenderness from that other man in his lifetime, maybe could have helped him heal, right? So I want to live a life with no regrets. And sometimes when I share my truth, it hurts because truth is inconvenient. But I see and I feel that my kids at some point are receiving it. And, we do argue, we do make mistakes, and I am not perfect, but I'm loving. And that includes facing my truth. And sometimes I have blinders on. And our kids are our teachers. And I'm like, yucks. Yes, okay, the blinder is there. But when I take them off, it is a service to myself. I have the conscious intention of wanting, at least trying, to be reminded when I have them on. You have to feel safe in order to take those blinders off. But if you're stuck in your trauma, you don't feel safe. But what happens when, as a culture and as a community and children, if we're not taught how to create safety within ourselves, our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, then how do we navigate the trauma? We can't. Because here's the thing. In our sympathetic nervous system, the part of our, autonomic nervous system that is in fight or flight. And then when freeze happens for some of us is because we've tried the fight or flight and we've been there too long, and then we go into freeze mode. And that's where at some point the body says, I can't do this anymore. I can't even get out of bed. I've tried all the ways to protect my pain and to keep it inside my body, and I cannot do this anymore. So we're all one trauma away from each other. It takes one traumatic life event to change your brain, to change your mind, to change the way you interact with yourself and with others. So enough BS, enough judging ourselves because of what we're going through. We're one trauma away. So I'm exhaling as I say this to relax my own nervous system. We don't exhale enough and long enough in our lives. We don't reset enough. And Mother Nature is our greatest teacher to reset. And she has been a savior for me, to me. My father used to take me on long walks, and he connected me with nature, and he called nature his ultimate muse, his ultimate perfume.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that just stayed with me. It's like imprinted in my soul, because he would have me close my eyes and taste the essence of pine needles and differentiate between different trees. And he would lay my ear to the rocks and just listen to the silence. Like, it's all there. And then he would go back into his own addiction and I would lose him. And that sense of abandonment of, oh, it's all there for a moment, but it's going to leave me and I'm going to be left behind. And when we feel abandoned, it's a micro death. I don't know what you're going through in your life right now if you're listening, but we go through micro deaths every day because we are on our way to our own death, first of all. And depending on our triggers and our trauma, because we all have trauma, and remember that trauma is not just the presence of a threat, but it's the absence of safety, right?
Mm.
And that's traumatic in itself. And it's about presence and what we're getting as nourishment. And when we're not getting what we need, it feels like an abandonment in some way, because the child who keeps crying, because it's its only way of letting everything out and demanding to be seen, we do that in tantrums and other ways in our relationships. We throw tantrums, right? In different ways. So every time I'm about to throw a tantrum, and I'm calling it like that just because we all have an inner child in us who's always active. The 4.5-year-old child is always active within us. I see her come by and I see her rise and I'm like, okay, there you go, little one. Okay, you've been there for a long time trying to protect me, and you created a refuge for me so I could validate my pain and how much it hurt. But I'm an adult now and I don't need you anymore, because I know my triggers and I know where I come from in my nervous system. And therefore, I have the tools to create safety in moments of trigger inside of me so I don't have to lash out at other people.
I have a similar situation too. You write in your book about Dr. Alan Shore, who provided a lot of clarity for me as I was raising Jonah as a toddler for several reasons. But first, he talks about the fact that there's this soundtrack, an emotional music soundtrack that we carry from our childhoods. And if the melody contains notes of toxic stress, parental emotional unavailability, or violence, it lets us know we aren't secure. And we take this soundtrack into all of our relationships as adults until we do the work, we go to therapy, we take the time to sort out that that's just a soundtrack. It's not actually who we are. And I think this speaks to what you're saying. I think you've taken your experience of childhood with two loving yet addicted parents, and you've created, I've watched you on stage, I've watched you with Ella Grace, you've created an entire ecology of safety for them amidst what could have been, a pretty chaotic situation. At one time, you were married to a very big political figure, and maybe we'll get to that. Maybe I don't even want to, but it doesn't matter. You took care of it. You evolved what was true in your childhood. You evolved that emotional soundtrack, and you created a totally different one for your kids. And I just want to say, I really see you. I see you more now that I've read your book, but I really see what you did to change the music, as it were.
How beautiful does it feel to be seen by you as well? Thank you. In the book, there was a quote that I wrote, and it just churns my soul. It says, "Your emotional biography sets the musical scale of your life, but your unwounded soul writes the ultimate symphony."
Your unwounded soul writes the ultimate symphony. Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
So your emotional biography sets the musical scale of your life, but your unwounded soul writes the ultimate symphony. No matter how much trauma, hurt, suffering you've been through, your soul is untouched.
Ooh.
It is, and it's perfect. Yeah, I know I have chills everywhere right now. We will talk about my reality because it's the only one I experienced. So I was married to the Prime Minister of Canada, who is still a great friend, and have the most three incredible little human beings who are now 11, 16, and 17. And on the co-political path, I came to live in threat for the physical and psychological safety of my family. And that triggered all my fears and wounds from childhood and had me navigating very turbulent waters inside myself while trying to hold the fort, and presented me with opportunities to either be stuck in that cage or try to do the work of navigating my pain so I could open those bars and get out. Remembering that the cage was the one I built for myself, right? But that the exterior elements of unsafety that I was facing were real. I didn't invent them, they were real. And they brought me to spaces inside of me that felt unsafe. And so I had to make a conscious choice of, how do I take the reins again and instruct myself reaching out for help, because we can't do the work solely. And anybody who believes in the concept of self-made woman and self-made man knows very well that every single human encounter, whether it's positive or negative, forms us in our brain, in our experiential way of learning, because it's the only way the human brain lives and works and learns. And I had to be the most courageous version of myself. And I never thought that I would have to transform my personal relationship to myself and my marriage, to take a leap, not knowing what it would look like on the other side, being exposed to the eyes of the world, and letting that go.
Well, also, since you've done that, actually, you're your own person now. You're your own being, and you took all of the experiences that you had as that first lady business, and you mined it all. You made it into something incredible.
Well, thank you. I'm proud of having been courageous, okay? And what I'm receiving from others is such trust. What people tell me and confide in me when they meet me, because of the book, because of, the work that I do, because I feel very responsible for the voice that I've been given. But I hope that I don't take myself too seriously in this whole venture, because then I'm disconnected. But I never believed that I was a first lady. I thought that was just a title. And if I identified with it, as with any other job title or, work that we all do in our own areas of life, we're so much wider than our work. But we identify with it, and it provides so much validation and confirmation that sometimes when we lose that, who are we? So a question that I often ask myself is, lights are off. I'm not married to anybody. I don't do what I do. I don't even hold a name, the Sophie name that was given to me. Now, who's left? Who's left, and how do I treat that person? I think that's the only goal, to be honest, to be so intimate with life and with me.
It's very Buddhist, very Zen.
Is it?
You
Good.
might as well just have sat for a month in a practice period, because that's That's it.
I think I have. Well, I mean, people don't know, I'm a student of yoga and meditation, and I teach it too, but I always see myself more as a student than a teacher, even when I teach. But when I am in the teacher's seat, I feel very at home as well, just because I know that I'll go back to learning more after, right? And we can fill our brains with knowledge, and it's great. I mean, it allowed us to go to the moon, right? And back. But I'm more intrigued by the depth of our emotional capacity to connect as human beings. I think the greatest wounds we've ever caused to ourselves and to humanity is to be disconnected and for our egos to take over. I mean, think about genocides and wars and discrimination and divisiveness. And now we live in such a polarized world where our levels of attention have been hijacked to very little time, quick and fast, too quick, too fast, overwhelming our nervous systems, not being able to drop from the brain in our heads to the brain in our hearts. The heart has a nervous system around it, and like anatomically, it looks a little bit like a nervous system where it has the capacity to predict negative events. So when Dr. Gabor Mate says, when you haven't listened to your heart, well, it has negative consequences because the heart has a network of intelligent neuroreceptors in a way. And now that we're learning that we cannot dissociate the emotional system from the immune system because they have the same role to take and to push away what is not good for us from an emotional perspective or immune perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bad bacteria or the whatever, the bad virus, and to keep in what is good, the good bacteria in the gut, and push away, the negativity, the toxicity from the emotional center. Now, research is showing that women, as we hold the nucleus of the family and the emotional load of our family members, and although incredible men from across this world have risen to the occasion of creating a more equal share of what it means to be in life and in partnership and in community, we still hold the nucleus of the family and we are depleted in our nervous systems because it's too much, too quick, too soon, or too long and too deep, right? So, our capacity to come back to center means to be conscious of what is happening to us. And I became more conscious of what was happening to me. And by the way, my body was talking to me. Like I was having like anxiety attacks, name it, right? And for anybody who's listening, I'm sure that once in your life you felt your body tell you, "Oh my, this is way too much for me to take." And it's affecting your sleep and your quality of relationships and your level of patience and your not only your tolerance but your capacity to accept others and their differences. And here's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned while writing the book and speaking to a 40-year-old practice psychologist. I mean, she's in her, I think, late 70s now. She said, "Sophie, the most unhappy human beings I've ever met in my practice are the ones who cannot trust in others."
Ooh.
Aha.
And the reason why they can't trust in others is because they don't trust themselves.
You got it. And what does it mean to not be able to trust yourself? It means to not be conscious of what is happening in your nervous system and in your body before those big emotions arise. So I met with Dr. John Gray, who's a scientific from Stanford and who's a couples relationship expert. And his expression CPR means catch, pause, repair. Are you catching right now? For example, you're getting angry, let's say. Your hands are starting to shake, or you're getting hot flashes, your throat is constricting, you feel flushed in the face. So your body is always sending you the red flags. Before, are you catching this and saying, "Holy crap, I'm on fire right now. I feel the anger rising. I'm about to lash out"? Pause. Okay, I see what's happening. This is okay. I'm going to feel the anger because human emotions are not dangerous. They need to be felt. Don't suppress them. So I'm going to feel it. Why am I angry? This is what's happening right now. Then you pause. Can I take a minimum of 5 deep breaths through the nose and sighing them out the mouth for a longer period? So, shaking the body.
I loved watching you teach on stage all of these vagus nerve toning exercises. You're such an expert and you're also such a student.
Yeah, well, they work, hon. They work.
They're so good. It was so good.
And this allows you the end of CPR to repair, which means not only saying to yourself, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have you, little child inside me who wants to be seen and validated and loved. I didn't catch you in that moment, but now I see you. I see you. I got you. And if you do this with yourself, you can do it with other people. But if you don't do it with yourself first, you will not be able to work from a container of safety within you. So you can create a container of safety with somebody else. Because remember that a relationship is not just you and me, it's the space in between.
That's right. First of all, for our listener, I just want to say this book spans a whole life. So we go from your emotional biography, as we were talking about, what happened in your childhood, how that's impacting what you are now. And Sophie even has a section on the attachment styles with Dr. John Gray. Very, very helpful to have this sort of crib sheet going from secure, insecure, avoidant, disorganized, la la la. But I just want to say, the book takes us through an entire life. And so we focus on parenting because we have this in common, but there's also a whole section on ways of relating. Terry Real is here. Like, this is a very comprehensive book that I'm keeping close to me because I can look at it anywhere I look in this book. Boom, I find something useful to apply to a difficult situation that I'm enduring right now. And that's why Sophie's here. I also want to ask one thing, and I don't know why I'm asking this. This is so weird. It's out of left field. It's not in my questions.
Try me.
This is for your kids. I just want to put this on the record because maybe your kids will listen. At least Ella Grace will. Hi, sister, by the way. Ella Grace, love you. When you and your former husband, their dad, met, do you remember the scene and how that went? I, as a child, loved hearing the stories of my parents meeting for the first time and realizing that they really loved each other. And I wonder if you would be willing to share that story.
Yes, I will. Yes. With openness and vulnerability. And I hope that even with our transformed relationship, I hope that I can still inspire and tell that story to my grandchildren. Because sometimes it's not by lack of love that we evolve and transformed. It's because of our conscious choices to what we need as nourishment. Love can still be there. And I think that when you have had a great love story, which I have, it keeps evolving, and we have a responsibility to celebrate the history of love for our children to see.
Yes, exactly.
And I knew Justin my whole life from afar because I was friends.
You met his brother,
I was friends with his brother, who we lost, unfortunately, bless his soul, in an avalanche when he was in his 20s. And I must have met Justin maybe, 3 times in my childhood, but we were like 5 years apart. He didn't even know of my existence, but he was the cooler older brother, although he's a geek and he didn't feel cool, but that I learned later. And when we met, we were co-hosting an event together. And a couple of months later, he invited me to go for dinner. And I'll skip a couple of details, but right through dinner, I could feel his gaze. I could feel him almost looking through my soul. And I was like, oh my. And by the end of the evening, he was supposed to drive me to my place, which we were just getting ready to do. But he looked at me and we were at his place and he said, his face changed. And I'm like, are you okay? And he said, yeah, but I'm 31 years old. And I said, yes, I know. And he said, I've been waiting for you 31 years.
Oh, that took my breath away. Jeez.
Trust me, it took mine too. And we bawled like children. And little did I know what was coming after us, because politics wasn't part of the conversation at all.
What was he doing at the time?
He was studying mechanical engineering. Then doing a master's in environmental geography. And then he became prime minister, wow. And our lives took a different path completely. And thank God we didn't know what was going to await us, because we would have said no. And by the way, I said no from the get-go, and then I got convinced. And there was no way of resisting, because it was my life path. And now that I look, I still love. I love differently. I hope I love with more patience. And sometimes when you truly love someone, and it hurts right now to say it, because you can't get rid of that pain instantly at all. You set them free. And it hurts. And it hurts and it hurts. But it does bring a smile to the heart somewhere and the unwounded part of the soul, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh. Dear listener, thank you for bearing with us while I hear that story. The book goes on to take us through even the neurochemistry of teenagers. Like, this is very, very helpful to all of us at every stage of our lives. I'd love to hear a little bit about the part with Dr. Gabor Mate, this bit about toxic masculinity I've noticed in my own life recently, just recently, 54 years old, how much the internalized patriarchy exists in my body and in my mind, my thinking, my choices. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of your takeaways in speaking with him. I know you have a whole section with him regarding women's health.
Mm-hmm. Not too long ago, I was asked to write a letter to the daughters of the world for this platform. And I'm like, how do I start this? So I have 2 boys and 1 girl, and my daughter is Ella Grace, and you know her. And when I gave birth to Ella, when they put her on my chest, she was like screaming, right? Which is a good sign. She's alive and her lungs are functioning. And then I just leaned in and I said, Ella, it's mommy. I'm right here. And then I heard a long exhale, and she instantly stopped crying. So I bawled of joy.
Naturally.
And yeah. And then I realized that I was bringing this fairy into the world, into a world that is no fairy tale. And then I continue in the letter writing about the fact that we hold our breaths as young little girls and boys, by the way, for play, as a surprise. Or, when we play hide and seek, when we're about to jump off something and we're exciting. But then as we grow into girls and young women, we hold our breaths for many other reasons. Daily discrimination, not fitting in with the gang of boys, being rewarded for self-betrayal, betraying our bodies becoming battlefields, being taught how to become our own enemy and to be in competition with other sisters and women. And we breathe differently. We lost the breath of the playful child. I have a whole chapter in the book on playfulness, mischief, and humor, and how it allows us to create a sense of a container of safety in our body. It is paramount that we play. When a mammal or an elephant stops playing, it's because they're sick. Same for humans. Playfulness tells the human brain it's going to be okay. You're good. So now I lost the question because I'm feeling it so deeply. What was the question?
Well, I really wanted to know your sort of takeaways from
on patriarchy.
On patriarchy, but really anything that Dr. Gabor Mate brought forward for you that was very helpful. I know that it's been very helpful for me to speak with him and learn from him and study with him and read his work. And I've just learned a great deal about the wound that I've had as a kid of being abandoned and how that played out in so many temper tantrums in my 20s and even into my 30s in my relationships. I'm just curious to hear what you took away from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for redirecting me.
Yeah.
So Gabor, he says that, first of all, he's an imperfect human being and he regrets a lot of the things that he's done, and he's very vulnerable about it. And women are 70 to 80% more likely to suffer from autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, MS, lupus, name them, right? And women who have been taught in our culture to put their needs last and to take care of others first have a greater chance of suffering from autoimmune diseases. Now, science is showing this to us. So, patriarchy has demanded of us that we put our visceral, legitimate, sensuous connection needs aside to take care of others. And it comes at a very, very, very high price for us as women and girls, but for men as well. And because men are also equally in their own ways exposed to what we call toxic masculinity, but which really means to not be in tune with who they are, to be identifying with what they do and how much they can control and dominate. at the detriment of their emotional intelligence and their capacity to tolerate and accept the difference of others. So look at the state of the world right now. Look at leaders in every sphere of society, including governance. Look at the facial expressions of the people who invite divisiveness and create fear and kind of like create a container for fear and celebrate that because the ego feeds on it. And ooh, we're stronger because we can dominate. So, a human being, if we were face to face right now, what do you think you pick up on when you meet somebody else in 100 milliseconds? What's the first thing human beings pick up on?
Well, facial expression,
There you
body
go.
language,
There you go.
I guess.
There you go. Facial expressions. So your human brain, every second of the day, it's an unconscious radar, but it goes and it seeks to get away from danger and to seek comfort. So facial expressions are our only way as human beings, and think about how AI is coming into our lives now as a crazy speed. Facial expressions are giving us the cues of safety or unsafety. So if we are not teaching ourselves as young as possible to recognize how our nervous systems and bodies work, how we act and react, then we are raising boys and girls to be afraid of themselves and of each other. And this leads to the erosion of democracy, which is the most perfect of all imperfect systems, right? So the way you vote, and the way you feel validated and seen by people out there or in your own communities and families, and how sometimes religion can be used, to trigger fear and shame and guilt. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. And a sense of belonging, because it's the only thing we want is a sense of belonging. But if fear, shame, or guilt and divisiveness is used and we're not conscious of it, we are leading unconscious lives because we're stuck in our nervous systems without creating a container of safety.
It makes good sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So in a way, democracy and the health of our democracies relies on our capacity to regulate ourselves and create containers of safety within ourselves, in our schools, institutions, governments, and families. Yeah, I know.
It's just such a big deal.
It is. And then when astronauts go into space, it's been studied that they come back either with a sense of awe and or depression, mental health issues, because you realize how small and insignificant we are, but that we are made of that stardust and we are universal and we are as spacious as the universe and that it goes way beyond our physical body. So what does it mean to be in a depressed state? It means to be taking a deep rest, a deep rest from all the masks we wear and the nervousness that controls us because we're not creating containers of safety within us. So a deep rest is also a deep rest from being in fight flight all the time because the body can't take that anymore. So let's remind ourselves that we are worthy of resetting, that we are worthy of being in contact with our breath and knowing that we are being breathed, whether we like it or not. Hold your breath for a minute and you see what happens, right?
Yeah.
We're being breathed. We're being breathed no matter your religion, your ethnic background, your beliefs, whatever it is. You're being breathed. Albert Einstein said, either you see life in two ways. Either nothing is a miracle or everything is a miracle. And he did believe, as a scientific person, that everything was miraculous, had a part of the miraculous root to it, So can we go to bed tonight bathing in these waters?
That's right. I mean, that's all we've got, really, where we put our attention, how we spend our precious energy. The rest of this book, dear listener, Closer Together, is just a treasure trove. I can't say it enough, of walking through all the systems of the body as they relate to our emotionality, as they relate to our relationships. And the title, Closer Together, really is about bringing us not just closer together to each other, but closer to ourselves. And particularly as women, we basically, as Sophie talks about in the book, hormonally we're set up to absorb all the stresses of everything and everyone. That's our sort of quote unquote job as we head into like our mothering, parenting years. Whether or not we have a kid is irrelevant. That's the hormone chemistry that we're carrying. As we get older, and I've talked about this before, Dr. Sarah Gottfried, formerly Gottfried, now her name is Saul, Dr. Sarah Saul, has taught me that we have a veil that lifts as we get older by some miracle and mercy that stops this whole chemistry of being adaptable. We can absorb everything. And suddenly we're just like, I'm going to curse. No fucks given. No more, with all due respect. And, you know, watching myself go through this, watching my friends go through this, I think this is where things get very interesting as we get older and really sweet in ways that I didn't expect.
I'm in menopause right now, so you were speaking to me very deeply.
Same.
Yeah, and you know, we speak a lot about menopause these days, and it's so important. We do have to speak as well about andropause and what men are going through, because in relationships, when we go through that in similar ways, you know, if we're close in age to our partners, it really creates different kinds of emotional settings and signatures. So we have to be conscious of that. And you know, when you speak so kindly about the book, one of the greatest, I would say, compliments or validation that I receive is when I see people with their books and they're coming to a book signing and the book is filled with Post-its. And they're like,
That's right.
I keep going back to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me transform this into a living experience. A lived experience is, if you go back to it as a book, I go back to it because I'm not going to let go. I'm going to keep showing up, and you keep showing up, and we're going to meet again on the path, whether I see your face or not. And something happens where that Buddhist saying, leap and the net will appear. We are working on that net where the threads are becoming more solid so that nobody falls through the holes, right? That is the mission. That's the assignment. And you don't have to be a spiritual warrior or whatever to work on that net. You just have to work on your nervous system and on what's close to you in your life so that we make this net a great, beautiful hammock for everybody to freaking get a rest into at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. So wild.
So we can rock ourselves as a society back into safety, you know?
And speaking of which, there's a whole section that I noted about, it's a quote from Jack Kornfield, but a whole section on this, that we can actually speak to our hearts directly. Most ancient cultures know this.
That makes me cry. It just, yes.
Thank you for that. For including it. It's just beautiful. In chapter 5, there's a whole section on breaking out of the sort of emotional biography, the attachment style with which you were raised, you know, checklist. This is like a workbook. It's so many different things, this book. I'm so impressed with the level of research and care. How long did this dang thing take you?
Well, you know what? The pandemic kind of served me because I could lock myself in a room and tell the kids, go do your online schooling. And I have to write. So I had my butt sitting on a chair, and I'm a very active woman. I love to move and dance and do sports. So it was a big thing for me to sit my butt down and not move. But I think it served me. And, you know, the interviews that are in the book, because every chapter is a little bit of my story. And the other half of the chapter is a conversation with one of the best world experts out there. And this format is very unique. That's what people say. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Yep.
I wanted people to be able to look at their lives from childhood to adulthood. And even if you're a teenager, it doesn't matter. And to be able to see how you build your own arc of personality and how you can, you know, understand yourself better. And even if we meet or not face to face on the path, know that you're seen and that you're understood and that we're here to take care of each other from beginning to end.
I cannot thank you enough for the book, first of all, for your friendship, second of all, for your trust, thirdly, for your studentship, your mind, your heart, your work. I really just am in awe of you and how you roll through the world. I'm really thankful. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Oh, so much love. And by the way, you know, this whole thing, it's serious, right? Because it's serious work, but it should be fun. And there's a whole dose of mischief in that book and in my life. And I think that's contagious.
There is.
So I'm
it's
sending
true.
you, pull a little practical joke on somebody today. Go smile. Go do something silly. Go be a playful child a little bit.
Yep. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that caveat. Thank you so much. Please tell Ella, love her, love you, and thank you forever.
Can't wait to see you again.
Same.
Bye.
Bye, sister.